ending. Finally, a coach's challenge. Nick Nurse celebrated by hugging many people. Watch this. They give him a thumbs up. Aw, he's like, you did it. Congratulations. It's a long road for him in that coach's
Coach
challenge.
Nate's still coaching. He's pointing at himself. He's like, Nick's like, give it in.
You gotta save those coaches' challenges for the end, and I think that was a smart move. We learned that game 1 with the Raptors.
Well, yes, that is true. It's been an interesting road for all the coaches' challenges there, but here we go. Welcome to The Jump on this Veterans Day. We want to say thank you to everyone currently serving, to everyone who has served, and to their families too, because you guys know when someone is in the military, their whole family is in the military and sacrifices. I also want to thank anyone fighting on behalf of veteran benefits. We need to be taking better care of our military after they serve as well.
Amen.
And with that, I am Rachel Nichols alongside NBA front office insider Amin Al-Hassan and multi-time WNBA All-Star.
Which one for Africa?
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Very impressive here, although you got to be careful.
No, yeah,
No,
yes.
5 with him because it's dangerous with Amin.
Getting better.
Coming up, the Knicks were so bothered by last night's loss to the Cavaliers that the general manager and team president came out for an impromptu post-game presser. Is Coach David Fizdale going to take the fall? We will discuss with our Adrian Wojnarowski coming up in just a little bit. First, though, so the Raptors are here in LA facing the Clippers tonight, which means for the first time ever, a Finals MVP will face the team he won the Finals with just a couple months after winning the title. Kyle Lowry won't be on the court for that after breaking his thumb on Friday night, but he's obviously still the leader of this Toronto team and one of the players most affected by Kawhi Leonard's departure. I sat down with Kyle to talk about Toronto's outlook, load management, and of course, Kawhi. You're not playing right now because of a thumb injury.
Yeah.
How hard is it for you to sit out games?
It's tough, especially right now with us trying to still figure it out and going through a change that we've gone through, and then it being, the thumb again.
Now, when you got hurt, you were leading the league in minutes. You were
Yes.
averaging 39 minutes a game.
Yeah.
You know you're 33 years old, right? You're not supposed to do that?
I don't know that. I don't. I don't feel it. I always just try to do whatever my team needs. You never really kind of know. You just go out there and play and have fun.
You know, there's this thing called load management. You might want to check that out.
Load management is an amazing thing. I believe in it. Helped me win a championship, so I'm cool with it.
I was going to ask you that. What do you think? Because it's become more controversial, especially around Kawhi Leonard, and yet you were on the Raptors team that basically developed load management.
Well, I think everybody's situation is different. I think with Kawhi, he was coming off such an extreme injury, and I think it worked for Kawhi. I think it worked for our organization. So at the end of the day, Kawhi is going to do what's best for him and what's going to be best for him. Organization he's with now, I'm assuming they're going to do the same exact thing.
You guys did it last year with Kawhi and didn't really raise that much of a stink.
Right.
All of a sudden, the first few weeks of the season, this season, he sits out a couple national TV games, and there's so much criticism.
I think everybody's just speaking on what they do, and I think he's in LA, so it's a little bit different. In Toronto, we already had the plan going, and we knew what it was, and we still were, winning games, and we knew what we were doing. We knew when he was going to play, when he wasn't going to play, and it worked. It worked.
So let's talk about these Raptors-Clippers games have a lot of juice,
Yeah.
right? Because this is an organization that basically stalked your best player throughout the year and then convinced him to come over and play for them. What do you think it's going to feel like out on the floor just between the two teams?
I don't think it'll be anything. I think it's just going to be another basketball game. I think Kawhi respects, what he's helped us do, and he respects the teammates. And, the Clippers did a good job in their recruitment process. He made a choice for him. He decided to go home. And, for me as a player, and I think for every other player on our team, we're happy for him. We're happy for him, what he helped us do, and he's happy that he's happy.
So for a long time, the question about you and the Raptors were, can they ever get over the hump? What is the question now going forward?
Was it a fluke, I guess? People want to make up questions anyway, because they don't have their opinions, as always.
Well, how do you answer that fluke question?
Go out there and do your job every single night. We're going to do our best, and we're going to try to get that gold ball. We're trying to get back to that point. That's the goal. It's the only goal. It's the only goal that matters.
Thank you to Kyle for sitting down, even playing hurt in an interview. We got to give props for that. The outlook for the Raptors has been that they'll see where they are, right? After the first few months, things are going well, they push forward. If it isn't, maybe before the trade deadline, they get rid of some of these shorter contracts that they have veterans on. Remember, Kyle Lowry did extend during training camp, but it was just 1 year, right? So now Lowry is out for at least a few weeks. Serge Ibaka is out. Do you think these injuries, all sustained in one night, Friday night, might alter the course of what happens with this Raptors franchise?
No, because this is a really deep team, and they pride themselves on their depth. And we saw that last night. They didn't have either of those guys, and they beat the team with the second best record in the NBA, and the Lakers, and beat them handily. It wasn't like it was nip and tuck there. And that's a testament to the coaching, a testament to the talent. Obviously, Pascal Siakam has been better than I think any of us could have expected. We knew he was going to have to step up. But I don't think anyone saw him stepping up this much.
The Eastern Conference Player of the Week, just named just now, and he could win Most Improved a second year in a row.
I mean, that should be in the talks, but they don't like that. But the point is, when you talk about these injuries, 2 weeks for Kyle, right?
They said they'll reevaluate
in a couple of weeks.
So I would guess.
Ibaka and ankle again. These are very temporary. It's not like what happened to the Warriors, where it's huge, the campaign-defining injuries.
Yeah, and it's really interesting for the Raptors because the question is, was this a fluke? And yeah, it was not a fluke because you saw yesterday they have championship hangover. And if you look at the people that they're missing, Kyle Lowry, he's the guy that initiates offense. Serge Ibaka, he's the defender. And what did Pascal Siakam do? 3 blocks, galvanizing plays. He led the offense. Now, he didn't shoot the ball well, but he was a facilitator and he drew a lot of attention, double teams in the mid post. But the cool thing about this Raptors team is that the championship, like the culture has been there. They're kind of a farm system. Chris Boucher averaged 3 minutes a game entering last night, gives you 15 points, was blocking AD, was blocking LeBron James. And this is a guy that was a G League MVP. Pascal Siakam was a G League Finals MVP, G League champion. This is just who they are. They build talent. A lot of people were questioning Fred VanVleet. Was he going to be this good? Well, he's not a role player. This is just who Fred is. And it's been really cool to see how they harvest players. And these players, we're talking about Pascal Siakam. He has the opportunity to be the first guy ever to win Most Improved more than once. I mean, it could go back to back. We all know he's going to be an all-star.
They're not going to give him Most Improved twice.
I mean, the fact is he's upped his average by 10 points almost every year the past 3 seasons.
Well, I was really impressed with what they did last night against the Lakers. And to your point about sort of how they've kind of brought people up through the G League and all of that, it didn't feel like that deep a team the first couple weeks of the season with the Raptors. That's why Kyle Lowry was playing a league-leading 39 minutes a game. That they sort of felt like when that second unit came in, they didn't have as much. And then when they were forced to go that way against the Lakers, those guys all stepped up.
Yeah.
The other, the funny thing is, remember earlier in the season, where it was in the preseason, where Nick Nurse called out Rondae Hollis-Jefferson and Stanley Johnson. He does that because he knows at some point I'm going to need to rely on these guys, and they need to know what our standards are. And so that's the cool thing about when you have a system like Toronto, where once you win a championship, it's silly, but it solidifies everything that we do here.
Right.
And so you have the luxury.
You can't question the coaching.
Yeah, you can't question any of this, right? And the one thing about Toronto people need to know is the culture was established before Kawhi got there.
Yep.
And it was there when Kawhi's gone. It was there, and now that Kawhi's gone, it's still there. So they're able to ride the kind of waves of the season, leaning on things like that.
All right, so as we talked about with Kyle, the Raptors do face the Clippers in LA. This is going to be the first matchup between a Finals MVP and the team he left just a few months after. We've obviously had Finals MVP come back and play their old team, but no Finals MVP has left in free agency after he won the Finals. So this is the first time we've ever gotten this. Here's what Doc Rivers said about the excitement of the matchup.
It's going to be, fun to see the guys again and, just congratulate them and, be able to shake hands with the guys, the journey, also the country, the city. It was amazing. And, it's just so much you could keep going on and talking about it.
It's one of those leave good situations. It's not one of those leave awful situations, And let's be honest, in our league, it's usually the other way. He's got the benefit, a rare benefit of being able to leave in a happy state. That's rare. I don't know if has it happened? I don't know. If it has, it's rare.
Doc, a little more horse even than usual there. He says it was one of those leave good situations. Sinead, do you buy that it was a completely leave good situation?
I do think it was a leave good situation based on the fact that Toronto was thirsty. They were fiending for a championship, and they got one. And this was the first time they're in the NBA Finals, and they go 1 for 1. they'll take that versus not having anything at all. And I totally understand, like, it sort of spoke to my soul when Doc Rivers was saying this is so rare, because my personal experience leaving my team for work-related, issues, yeah, that was not easy. It was not a leave good situation. So, like, yes, I mean, I wish I could have brought a championship to Connecticut and then bounced, and then maybe things would have been better. But in reality is, Kawhi did it. And he did something that had never been done. The fans are happy. The fans are grateful. And I think that's why they have peace with it.
Work-related issues. That's mine. I'm gonna start doing a bunch of things for work-related issues from now on. It's leave okay. How about that? Leave aight. Maybe not leave good. Leave aight. Leave that's all right. On the one hand, what Chiney said is right, and particularly when you factor in, they knew they were taking a calculated risk. He wasn't a guy who would left them at the altar or whatever. They got him knowing he had 1 year left, knowing that
he never said, I'm going to make my home here. He never. Was very above board the whole year.
But he also brought it every night, unquestionably. There was no, he's half in or half out. He was all the way in. He delivered them the one thing that they'd never had. Remember, it's not just the organization and not just the fans, right? But the people who are actually working for the Raptors.
Yes.
We just talked about Nick Nurse now can do things and say things. Why? Because I got one of these.
Yep.
There's a bunch of people in that organization now who have that credibility and that stamp of approval because of this man, Kawhi Leonard. So I think it's cordial, but obviously they would have loved for him to stay because they did everything under their power. There's nothing you can say Toronto did wrong.
Yeah.
They should have done this more, or they should have given him more of this. They did everything under their power, and ultimately it wasn't enough.
I think that middle ground is probably the most accurate, right? A leave aight situation, leave okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anyone, and you heard Kyle being very gracious there in the interview. I think they all sort of want the best for Kawhi. They're all friendly. They all still talk occasionally, that kind of thing. But there was some animus in the Board of Governors meetings in July.
Yes, there
right?
was.
And that a lot of the tampering sort of investigations and things that went on after that and spurred new rules coming into place at the beginning of the season. Some of it was about all those contracts that got signed mysteriously at 6 p.m. on Sunday evening, but some of it was related to, hey, what have you done with our player throughout the season before?
Right.
Did you, I don't know, show up at a bunch of basketball games, college basketball style?
I didn't know you weren't allowed to do that.
Right. Right. I mean, there was reports of a lot of, we weren't all in the room, but there was reports of a lot of frustration there, even though publicly the Raptors organization was very gracious, even in that month.
I would say when you're talking about the conversations at that level, you're talking about people who maybe don't have the same perspective as people lower down in the organization. So people who are working, whether you're a front office person or a coach or a trainer, you know the deal. You know how this league works. You know that this is probably the best possible outcome of how someone could leave. Mm-hmm. When you're higher up and you're used to things happening your way because I've got a lot of money. What do you mean you won't stay? I'm giving them all the money. That makes it a little harder to swallow.
But also bringing it full circle, it's really interesting because this time last year, a lot of people saw Kawhi as the villain for fighting for his health, pushing his way out, and he completely changed that narrative.
Absolutely.
So much so that we're discussing load management and how much we want to see him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, coming up, Gordon Hayward out after fracturing his left hand. This stunk to see. This guy was finally making it happen. Did the Celtics' expectations change as the former All-Star recovers? We'll discuss that. But first, though, it's time for our distant replay from this date, 1999.
Okay.
From a man worth a lot more than a penny.
Vince Carter.
See what I did there?
Vince Carter's worth more than a penny.
No.
Oh, Penny Hardaway.
Knocked away by Marion.
Oh, look at young Sean Marion.
On the floor for Hardaway.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Yes. For Marion. They do a
You
little
can only do that
showtime.
if your teammate is in the Matrix. You get it? Yeah, I'm just all about the puns today.
She's just kidding, guys. Don't.
Oh boy. We all need a commercial break.
I needed legal advice for my shop. That's when I remembered that my ex-boyfriend actually went to law school, so I called him. He didn't call me back.
If your ex-boyfriend isn't a lawyer, call LegalZoom and we'll connect you with an attorney. LegalZoom, where life meets legal.
When you brew beer for over 250 years, you become surrounded by ritual. But there is none so powerful as a simple toast to your health. Or as we say in Ireland, slàinte.
If only there was a place nearby you could get one of these. Or these. Good thing they're sold literally everywhere business is done. I'm pretty sure you could buy them at a bank. Not sorry, Reese's.
Am I saying it well? L'chaim.
Maybe you're making Mary. Or maybe you're making cocoa. Maybe you're with the family you've got, or maybe the one you've chosen.
Culture salad.
Maybe there's lights. There's definitely lights. Maybe there's one less this year. Or maybe one more. Our holidays don't all look the same. And maybe that's what makes us great. Make the dream yours. IKEA.
So I went to Lowe's and got some
Doing it right runs in the family, so Lowe's has hard-working brands like DeWalt, Cobalt, and Craftsman, because you can bring the holidays together, even if you're apart. Get your choice of Craftsman Power Tool Kit or air compressor for $99. Do it right for less. Start with Lowe's.
When we started our business, we were paying like an arm and a leg for the postage. I remember setting up Ship Station. I think it was just like 1 or 2 clicks. Everything was up and running. I was printing out labels and saving money.
I'll do that.
Okay. Then you don't have to say it.
I appreciate it. It's a make or miss league.
Thank you, Patrick. Make homages. I don't think so. I don't think he changed his mind. I just think he was being nice. Speaking of being nice, thank you very much to the Maine G League team for making my dreams come true. Taco Fall, Tremont Waters, recreating the most iconic picture in NBA history. Thank you very much. I had this on my wall as a kid.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Manute Bol posing with Muggsy
How
Bogues.
big was your wall? Jeez.
Well, I'm just
high
saying.
ceiling. Vaulted ceiling.
Little Rachel, who was a Bullets fan, and now the team has a different name. They play in a different state, in a different arena. This is my only connection back to my childhood. Thank you very much. What do you guys think of the poster?
Original.
OG is better.
Gotta go with my guy Manute.
How many remixes
but they
are
brought
better?
They brought this back. And
It's
I'm
nice.
grateful.
It's nice. I'm
Miss
glad.
Rudeness, check out. Look at this.
Excuse me, pardon me,
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Mr. James.
I was a little stopped by
pardon
the
me,
sweat. Please, you were playing polite while LeBron is in his spot at the free throw line, right?
Could you, get into,
I mean, he didn't want the Myers-Leonard treatment. Like, get off me, son.
He's asking about a stapler there. That's what it was like.
Are you this polite when you're on the court?
No, not at all. I'm like, whoa, get out. That's my
Get out,
spot.
Polite on the court?
No.
Never.
Not off the court.
Make ice. He's like, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me. Nikola Jokic pulling out the old Smitty has he?
Smitty from the city.
Woo! And a dunk.
Did you know he had this in his
You
game?
can't call it a dunk.
How's that not a dunk?
You know who used to do the Smitty from the city really, really well? Like looking like Smitty? Shaq. I swear
fair.
in practice, he used to
Since
do it
you're
all
a
the
big guy,
time.
you can do this. But I thought Jokic gets points.
No, this is nice. It's nice.
Yes, the whole way.
Why
like,
are you
it was
like,
a
that's
party
not
of
a
the
dunk?
seas.
Smitty, we miss you, man.
Why
I
do
know
you
you
feel
saw
that's
it
not
on
a dunk?
ATV, but
How's that
I'm just
not a
watching you
dunk?
play.
We gotta celebrate.
What, the Jokic dunk? Come
Yeah,
on
that's
now.
like
Why is that
as
not a
good as
dunk?
it gets
Nah,
for
that's a dunk right there. And
Like,
Smitty
that's
wasn't
not
a dunker,
fair.
but that's a dunk right
not
there.
fair.
Yeah.
That's
you.
not his game.
Which
but,
one
like,
of you plays professional basketball?
ding,
That
ding,
one.
ding, ding,
So
ding.
Are we
she
gonna play
gets to
that?
decide where.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
that's what we
Definitely
play
gonna
every
play
single time. Every time, that is the answer. Miss the rules. Kyrie may have gotten away with a double dribble last night. Suns coach Monty Williams.
Am I the only person that thinks that wasn't a double dribble? Like he just brought up his guide hand? I don't think it was a double dribble. I think he's one of the best. We give him the benefit of the doubt. Now that they're
All right, we've had some different.
I like
Oh, so Amir Johnson doesn't get the benefit of the doubt? Is that what you're saying?
Nope.
Terry Johnson like, wait, what happened?
Yo! Wait, the worst part is no one on the other team of the Timberwolves didn't even notice. They didn't even notice. The bench didn't even
You
notice.
have to do like jumping jacks.
Right, this one-
Like, okay, guy hand comes up, but like it's like one of those
Janae,
things like,
you
hey.
can't have both of your hands on the ball at the same time.
Well, I mean, we don't know that for sure. Where's my bifocals? I don't have them. Refs need them.
Hey, Ref ain't see it.
Yeah, they see it.
I want to move on to Gordon Hayward, the Celtics forward suffering a broken left hand in Saturday's win over the Spurs. He is visiting a hand specialist today to determine the next steps. Could require surgery. Sinead, I felt like he was just finally back, right? The first couple weeks of the season looked like an all-star. That, to me, then changed my predictions of where the Celtics were going to be in the East. So now that he's hurt and possibly out for a while, now where does that put the Celtics' future?
Yeah, this really hurts me because as a player that's come back from injuries, it takes you about 2 years to feel like yourself again, and it's been about 3, and so now he's really his best self. He was shooting, 56% from the field, 43% from 3. He was back to the guy we loved and can take over games. Now, the reason why I think this really changes expectations is because they're so top-heavy on their team, meaning 5 or 6 of their guys play most of their points, and he was giving you 18 points. Kemba's been giving you a quiet 24, a real quiet. Jason Tatum's playing. I mean, it's kind of quiet because we're talking about Gordon Hayward all the time because of the injury. So yes, this changes the expectations. I did not expect them to have the best record in the NBA. Now I sort of expect them, hopefully he bounces back from this. I expect them maybe 2-slot, 3-slot because I have Philly coming out of the East.
Yeah, I mean, we also have to take a deep breath. Right? 10 games in, it's like, well, I guess the Celtics are going to be the best team in the league, right? But it does change expectations because he was playing well. He had finally returned to form, and so that gives you optimism that the Celtics are maybe a separator away from the rest of the pack.
They basically added an all-star player without adding the all-star player because last season he was good, but clearly still bothered by the injury. The season before he didn't play, so
Which, by the way, follows the same trajectory that Paul George went through in his recovery. But the good thing for them is they still have the luxury. They have those two wings of Brown and Tatum who are able to step up and do more. We saw Jaylen Brown do exactly that in that Spurs game. He went out and he had his best game of the year, and he's missed time earlier this year as well. So if there was ever a team that could survive something like that, it's the Celtics. But we feel bad because this guy fought so hard to come back to this point, and now it's kind of feeling like going back.
And I've always liked the addition of Kemba Walker just because it's like a fusion of the last great point guards for the Celtics. Isaiah Thomas, sort of in size and stature, but Kyrie Irving and his knack to just go after it and be aggressive scorer. So Kemba's working so far, and maybe he'll just take more of the offensive load.
He's an excellent leader.
Yes, absolutely.
Unselfish.
No question. And we'll just have to see with Gordon. I think we'll get more news today. It could be the kind of hand injury. Look, Kyle Lowry broke a bone in his hand, and they'll say, hey, we can reevaluate him in 2 weeks. Steph Curry broke a bone in his hand. Now, obviously, the Warriors in a different competitive situation than the Celtics.
Not for a year.
but they've said, hey, he'll be evaluated in 3 months. I know with Gordon, the break, they said was either in his 4th or 5th metacarpal. Am I saying that correctly? And that is a more significant injury than I know. See, with your hand injury, you and me have both broken our hand in the last year. It's better than the thumb, which is what happened to Kyle. I mean, it's worse than the thumb, which is what happened to Kyle. So we will just have to find out. We have a lot more news coming, though, because Adrian Wojnarowski is joining us after this next break. He's going to discuss his report with Malika Andrews today that Knicks president Steve Mills is, quote, laying the groundwork to fire David Fizdale. This is super interesting. Stay tuned for that. First, though, I want you to join the NBA family and the Department of Defense in celebrating those who have continued to serve our country this Veterans Day. To learn more about the NBA Cares Hoops for Troops program, say hi to our crew over there. Hi, crew.
Y'all are terrible actors.
Visit NBAcares.com.
And the players that we've assembled, but we also have to acknowledge that we haven't played at the level we expected to play at. We haven't played we've seen glimpses of how we can play as a team when everything comes together.
I got a 2.5-year contract. That's what insurance. That's our business. The insurance is about having a contract.
Fizz there in part reacting to a story from our Adrian Wojnarowski and Malika Andrews saying that Steve Mills, quote, has started to lay the internal groundwork for Coach Fizdale's eventual dismissal, which is very big. Welcome to the Jump, Woj. And I want to give everyone a heads up. Woj also very hard working the Gordon Hayward story. So if you see him tweet in real time here, that's probably what that is, and that's lucky too. Woj, tell us a little bit though about this Knicks story. How does that jibe sort of with what you've been told that Fizz is out there this morning saying he has assurances, he's got a contract, he's had Perry supported behind him?
Well, David Fizdale is going to be a company guy. He learned that in Miami. You back management regardless of what might have happened the previous night in a news conference, but there's no question. You remember, Steve Mills has survived several coaching hirings and dismissals in New York. His overall record is well under 500, 150 games plus, I believe. And so he is consistently got the ear of owner Jim Dolan, and what he said publicly is very consistent with what he's saying privately, which is they have put together a good team for David Fizdale. This team should be winning. Now that is counter to, I think, a lot of the conventional wisdom around the NBA. Other executives, coaches in the league were stunned by that news conference, the timing of it, the tone of it. While your coach is in the locker room talking to the team to march in and do that. It was unusual.
Yeah, I mean, that was, to me, one of the also really super interesting parts of this piece you wrote, because you had that line saying, Mills is selling James Dolan on a roster constructed to be highly competitive in the East. And then you had other reporting in the story there saying rival executives and scouts see the roster as unbalanced and, quote, slow of foot. So how does that all jive together, especially with Mills telling Dolan, hey, this should be a competitive team in the Eastern Conference?
Well, in the end, this is a coach who has 2.5 years left on his contract, and this is what happens when the team is not playing well. You're not going to see Steve Mills here really take much responsibility for the fact that this is, that they've had Mitchell Robinson out, that Frank Ntilikina has trouble keeping, the speed of opponents is tough. You saw it last night with Sexton and Garland. And right now, especially with Kristaps Porzingis coming back Thursday, what the Garden could look like, sound like. He comes back, plays well. And that trade that is on Mills and Scott Perry's resume last season and how far it is clear to set them back, you saw this was a precursor last night to getting out in front of it and putting it on the coach. That's where the Knicks are right now, Rach.
Well, is there any sense of how quickly the Knicks would intend to move in this situation?
Well, at 2-8, this is a team that, especially at home, they've gotten blown out twice now at home, Sacramento, Cleveland, and I think the home blowouts, certainly, put some gravity on this. They did just win at Dallas. They played well at Boston, who's been the elite in the East, but those bad home losses certainly have played a factor in the optics of this 2-8 start. And, for David Fizdale to make it beyond this week, he probably needs to not have more of those. But there's no question he is very much on the clock with management. And, they are putting this squarely on him. They made that clear last night.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to really express to people who don't do this day to day just how rare a press conference like that was last night from that organization that's been sort of secretive and kept management out of the public eye to do it this early in the season. I think this is absolutely fascinating. And of course, the Knicks beat the Mavericks when they played in Dallas, but as you mentioned, when Kristaps Porzingis comes to town, it's going to be an entirely different story. Woj, I know you're working like 4 other stories right now, so if you get breaking news later, we will be checking back with those reports as well. We really appreciate you taking time out to do this today now.
Thanks, Rach.
All right, talk to you soon. So, Chiney, what was your reaction seeing what happened last night at the Garden and then seeing Fizz come out this morning and be like, oh, I'm going to be okay?
Yeah.
Nothing to see here?
If I'm a player in that locker room, I have a lot of questions, just because you don't want that type of transitional energy going around your team, especially when you're fighting for wins. And I think Woj's point was right, spot on the money. Like, if you think about playing on the road, there are no expectations there, really. You're going to go out there and play hard. And it's not been a question of whether the Knicks are playing hard, because I think a lot of guys are. Marcus Morris is leading the team in scoring. Julius Randle is doing what he is doing. I know he had 20 points per game last year, but this year it's 15 or so. Kevin Knox, double figures. And RJ Barrett is doing his best to try to bring life to this franchise. It's not necessarily about playing hard, it's about playing well. And I think balance is the issue, but you can't point to the roster and say this is all Coach Fizdale's fault, because he's only been there 2 years. This is something that you, in the city of New York, you can point to across the city and say, all right, they've been building something and there's fruition from what they're building. I don't think it's all on the coach, it's decision making. Again, everyone's going to have their eyes on the Garden when Kristaps comes back, and I think that's the issue here. They're trying to get ahead of a situation instead of stay behind it, and it's unfair to the players.
Yeah, the weird thing here, there's a lot of weird things, right? Start with 10 games in, you feel the need to have any sort of State of the Union address about your team, regardless whether they're 0-10, 10-0, to do that. Then you're doing it after the game. Typically a time where tempers are flared or whatever. If you were going to do that, wouldn't you wait till the next day to make some sort of statement like that? 3, you're doing it while the coach is still in the locker room talking to the team. So obviously you haven't consulted with him about expectations or anything like that. And so when I see Steve Mills, who's been in the NBA forever, and I see Scott Perry, who's been in the NBA forever, do something that is so out of the ordinary, the only thing that I can do connecting the dots is say they were compelled to do so.
So this is, I asked our producers to put this together today. this is everyone's tenure with the Knicks, right? Obviously, Fizz, the most recent, just got there compared to the other two. Steve Mills was during the Phil Jackson era, right? When we talk about, oh, it's different since Phil Jackson came, it's different with Scott Perry. But, sorry, since Phil Jackson left, it's different with Scott Perry, not different with Steve Mills. And the team, you can think about what the team's record has been over that time. You see the percentages there.
Right. So, but
It's hard for me to say this is David Fizdale's fault.
But the point being, even if it was Fizz's fault, that's not how you handle it. And these are not two neophytes. They're not guys who came from Wall Street and we're trying our hand at this NBA thing. These are NBA guys. So to see those guys do that, I feel like that comes when you're under pressure from someone else, someone who controls your destiny. I'm not naming names. I'm just saying that's not the way that you behave. Now, you talk about the roster, unbalanced, not only in terms of position, but also a lot of players of similar talent levels. So it's very hard to create clear defined roles. Shanae, if you walked in the locker room and you say, I'm the best player here, but then there are like 7 other guys who think the same thing and can legitimately do so because the talent level is all the same. It makes it harder to kind of put together some structure. And then finally, I can't leave Fizz off the hook as well because he's kind of done things with the lineup. You know, some of it is injury driven, but some of it seems like there's not a lot of consistency.
And it affects players' confidence.
Right. From day to day where I don't know where I stand in the coach's eyes. All of this is to say it's a bad situation. I don't think there's any one person to blame other than
Then
I'm not gonna name names, but just keep going upstairs.
You're talking about ownership there.
Oh, yeah.
Right, okay. Now it's interesting, you guys saw Woj during our talk with him that he was in the middle of checking a bunch of things. I mentioned at the top he was working on the Gordon Hayward news, and sure enough, he's got Gordon Hayward news. So let's take a look at that. Boston Gordon Hayward will undergo surgery on his fractured left hand today, his agent Mark Bartelstein tells ESPN. I think we've got Woj back to talk to us about this. Oh, we're going to come back on camera
Rachel,
here.
yeah, just...
Oh, here we go. Go ahead, Woj. What you got?
Hey, Rach, now you know what? Well, I just spoke with Mark Bartelstein, Gordon Hayward's agent. He is going to undergo surgery on that left hand today in New York. He'll go under in the next couple of hours, and then they'll know better a timeline on Hayward's return to the Celtics, but he was in New York, met with a specialist. You know, they went through and decided that surgery would be the way to go, and we'll know more, perhaps as soon as this evening, about when the Celtics could expect Hayward back in their lineup.
Do you have even a rough time frame? Are we talking a month, several months? Do we know how much of the season he might end up missing?
I don't, Rachel, and I think they're going to be clear on that once the procedure is done. They accomplish what they hope they do, but they've been cautious on putting any timeline on it until that procedure is complete.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's just hard, I think, for Celtics fans who have finally been like, okay, this is the guy we got. This is the all-star we got. And Gordon played so well in Utah, has had so much trouble since being back in Boston. And to know that he might miss a big chunk of the season is certainly a blow for him personally and for Celtics fans. Thank you for reporting all this news live on the air. We appreciate it. You know, if anything else breaks in the next 20 minutes, we'll see you back again. We know where to find you. Thank you.
All right, I'll be here.
All right, so Chiney, what do you feel that is going to impact the Celtics now that we know it's not a couple weeks? It is at least, when you have surgery, you're out for what? At least 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months?
At least 6 weeks.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, no, I think that this is a tough loss just for, you know, Gordon Hayward personally coming back from an injury, and then right when you get your momentum, it's sort of, you know, but I think that's why we saw surgery happen so quickly, because, you know, when I had my second injury, I was like, let me have it as soon as possible so that I can get back to being the person I was. But I do think they can absorb this loss largely because Kemba, that's what he did in Charlotte. And then Jason Tatum, Jason Tatum is trying to take the next step, you know, and not just be the guy that people say is good, but he's going to be great. And then obviously Jaylen Brown, he's capable as well. So.
Today I laughed because this injury happened and I said to myself, you said Kemba's used to this. I'm like, this is still the best team he's ever played on.
Exactly.
Like, even with the injury, he's still the best team he ever played on.
Coming up, we will talk more about Nikola Jokic. He sunk a pair of game winners this weekend. Two game winners. Has he officially taken the mantle as the league's best center? He did get that spot in the All-NBA, but there's been controversy. We'll see. We'll talk when we get back.
Whoa. Burger King is now on Uber Eats. You can buy one Whopper and get one Whopper when you order. Have your next ring come from the King. Buy one Whopper, get one Whopper when you order Burger King on Uber Eats. Delivered your way.
For me, Guinness is very much about the people, so watch out for your friends.
Enjoy your night out, but enjoy it sensibly.
Take it slow, drink like a brewer.
Respect the beer.
Oh, there's no place like home for the holidays, 'cause no matter how far away you roam, when you pine for the sunshine of a friendly gaze, for the holidays you can't beat home, sweet home.
The United States Postal Service goes the extra mile to bring your holidays home.
Do you love Reese's? Do you love Reese's Pieces? Well, if we got a deal for you, we're making Reese's with Pieces. Sort of like a buy one, get one free inside the thing you just got. Nuts.
Russell is ready. Jimmy G and Kittle are ready. Are you ready?
My friend Jacoby and I are here in a few minutes to discuss if Lamar Jackson's dominance yesterday made him the MVP favorite.
Was the Saints' loss to the Falcons a fluke, Pablo?
Is LSU the best team in the nation after beating Alabama?
And we have a football fan's failed attempt at a people's elbow. Stay tuned.
Look at Jacoby. All right, and the season of 30 for 30 podcast is here. Episode 1 tells the story of basketball superstars Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird and the relationship they had with their Russian team owner, a person they grew to love, but with a mysterious past.
I know
with
about
stories
this.
of being a KGB spy and involved in organized crime.
I know about this.
Taurasi is the GOAT. Sue Bird is, well, I will listen anytime Sue Bird speaks about anything. He did not catch a bat with his bare hands, but he did so much. What will you remember most about Parker's career?
Two things. One, I remember the seasons where he led the league in points in the paint as a little guard who was not big or imposing or athletic. And two, I remember when he bumped heads with Steve Nash, whose eyes was bleeding and cut, and Tony writhed on the ground like someone had just shot him. He just like, oh my God!
Yeah,
I'll never
bitterness
forget
over
that.
there to my left. Go ahead.
And growing up in Houston, Texas, I remember this Spurs team taking all the hope and the soul out of us because they were just so dominant. But I have the same trainer as Tony Parker, Fabrice Gauthier, out here in LA, and he was talking about going to this Jersey retirement and how much it meant not only for us here in the U.S. but internationally.
I was going to say, I feel like Tony faced some bias when he came in and certainly got a hard time from the Spurs coaching staff wanting to test him and sort of knowing that he would react well to it and saying, you got to earn it. And he did that. He earned it. He earned it with all those fans, maybe some of which were a little leery of him, and he earned it with the coaching staff and his teammates.
You know what helps that hurt in the soul? When you sweep them. Oh, mwah!
Our league pass game of the night is Timberwolves at Pistons. Blake Griffin expected to play his first game of the season tonight. Welcome back, Blake Griffin. He will go head-to-head with Karl Anthony Towns. Griffin averaged a career-high 24.5 points last season with Detroit. They missed him, certainly to start the season. He was hobbled in the playoffs. What do you expect of his debut?
Well, I want to see how he moves, right? This knee has bothered him for quite a while, and I want to see what his mobility looks like, what his agility looks like. It's only one game, obviously, tonight, but this is something that we're going to have to monitor, and also is load management going to be a thing for Blake Griffin? Because the reality is, it would have been nice if they'd done that last year and they'd had him fresh for the playoffs rather than hobble out there.
I'm not so concerned just because, with the injuries, because he's changed his game from leaving Oklahoma to now where he is in the league. He's one of the most fun to watch under the rim, and we expect above the rim from him. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the questions about him at the end of that contract, as he gets more and more toward that end of that monster deal, is would his athleticism fade, and then would that contract become too onerous? We will find out, right? Whether this is going to be the beginning of more injuries for him or not. This just in at the buzzer. We get some scenes from around the NBA, players and teams celebrating our veterans, the entire league, and certainly us here at The Jump. Sending a big thank you to all our service members stationed throughout the globe. We appreciate your service, all the sacrifices of your family made on behalf of our country, not just on Veterans Day, but every day. Our Kenny Mayne, very good about that. We also want to send our condolences to our friend Scottie Pippen. He lost his older brother Jimmy to cancer this weekend. We are thinking of you, Scottie, and the entire family. Be well.